The night was dark and overcast, the moon hidden behind thick clouds that blanketed the sky like a shroud. Jack sat behind the wheel of his battered old sedan, navigating the desolate highway that cut through the remote countryside. He had spent hours driving, the endless road stretching ahead, and he couldn't shake the feeling of isolation that clung to him like a shadow. Jack had always been a practical man, unswayed by superstitions or ghost stories. But as he drove deeper into the heart of the countryside, he couldn't help but feel a growing unease. The road was devoid of any other vehicles, and the dense woods on either side seemed to press in on him, their branches reaching out like gnarled fingers. The radio crackled with static, and Jack decided to switch it off. He preferred the silence to the unsettling sound of interference. He glanced at the clock on the dashboard. It was nearly midnight. He had been driving for hours, and he was exhausted. Just as he contemplated pulling over to rest, he saw a figure up ahead, standing at the edge of the road. Jack squinted, trying to make out who it was. As he approached, he realized it was a young woman, her long, dark hair billowing in the wind. His instincts told him to keep driving, to pass her by without a second thought. But as he got closer, he saw that she looked distraught, her eyes swollen from crying. Jack, ever the Good Samaritan, slowed down and rolled down the window. "Are you okay?" he called out to her. The woman turned to him, her face pale and tear-streaked. "Please, you have to help me," she sobbed. "My car broke down, and I don't know what to do. Can you give me a ride to the nearest town?" Jack hesitated for a moment, his apprehension warring with his sense of duty. He glanced at the empty road ahead and then back at the woman. "All right," he finally said. "Hop in." The woman's relief was palpable as she climbed into the passenger seat. She introduced herself as Emily and explained that her car had broken down miles back, leaving her stranded in the middle of nowhere. She was clearly shaken, and Jack couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for her. As they drove in silence, the darkness of the night seemed to close in around them. The only illumination came from the headlights cutting through the obsidian void. Emily sat huddled in her seat, occasionally glancing out the window as if expecting something to leap out from the shadows. Jack tried to make conversation, asking her about her journey and where she was headed. Emily replied with short, tense answers, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. It was as if she were preoccupied with something other than their conversation. After what felt like an eternity, Jack finally saw the faint glow of civilization on the horizon. The town was approaching, and he could sense Emily's tension beginning to ease. As they neared the outskirts, she finally spoke up. "Thank you for helping me," Emily said, her voice still shaky. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come along." Jack gave her a reassuring smile. "No problem at all. I'm just glad I could help." But as he turned his attention back to the road, he noticed something unsettling in the rearview mirror. A pair of glowing, malevolent eyes stared back at him from the back seat, a pair of eyes that definitely did not belong to Emily. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as he realized that the figure in the back seat was not human. It was a grotesque, shadowy presence with twisted features and eyes that seemed to radiate pure malice. Panic set in, and he swerved the car to the side of the road, slamming on the brakes. Emily turned to him, her face contorted in a sinister grin that was nothing like the frightened woman he had picked up. "You shouldn't have stopped, Jack," she hissed, her voice now filled with an otherworldly resonance. In a frenzy of fear and desperation, Jack flung open the car door and bolted out into the night, leaving the possessed Emily behind. He sprinted down the dark highway, his breath coming in ragged gasps, the sound of her eerie laughter echoing in his ears. Hours later, a passing trucker found Jack, disheveled and trembling on the side of the road. He told the trucker about the hitchhiker and the malevolent presence in the back seat, but when they went back to the car, it was empty. No sign of Emily or the sinister entity. Jack never drove that highway again. The encounter had shaken him to his core, and he knew he had come face to face with something beyond his understanding. To this day, he can't explain what happened that night, But he knows one thing for sure. There are forces in the darkness that should never be trifled with, and some mysteries are better left unsolved. In the quiet, secluded town of Willowbrook, nestled deep within the woods, stood an imposing mansion known as Ravenwood Manor. It was a place of legends and whispered tales, a place shrouded in darkness that only the bravest dared to approach. But the locals, who had lived with its haunting presence for generations, knew better than to venture too close. The manor had a history steeped in mystery and tragedy. It was said to have been built by the enigmatic Lord Nathaniel Ravenwood, a man whose wealth and influence had cast a long, dark shadow over Willowbrook. Rumors swirled about the source of his wealth, and the townsfolk whispered of secret rituals and unholy pacts made in the dead of night. The story that sent shivers down the spine of every child in Willowbrook was that of Lady Eliza, Lord Nathaniel's wife. She had been a beautiful and vivacious woman, but her life took a nightmarish turn after she entered Ravenwood Manor as a bride. It was said that she was never seen again after that fateful day, and the manor's dark reputation was forever sealed. One particularly gloomy autumn evening, a group of friends gathered around a campfire near the edge of the woods. Their faces glowed in the flickering firelight as they shared tales of bravery and adventure. Among them were Sarah, a fearless and inquisitive young woman, and James, her daring and skeptical companion. As the night deepened, Sarah, fueled by curiosity, proposed a challenge to her friends. She would spend a night inside Ravenwood Manor, dispelling the superstitions that had haunted the town for centuries. Despite warnings and pleas from her friends, she was determined to prove that there was no truth to the legends. With an old, battered flashlight in hand, Sarah ventured into the overgrown path leading to the manor. The dense forest seemed to close in around her, and the trees whispered their disapproval. She reached the manor's grand entrance, the massive wooden doors creaking open with a haunting groan. The manor was a labyrinth of dark corridors, with faded wallpaper peeling from the walls and cobwebs that clung to every corner. Dusty portraits of long-forgotten Ravenwoods stared down at her with hollow eyes, their expressions twisted with malevolence. As Sarah explored further into the depths of the manor, she felt a strange chill in the air. The temperature seemed to drop, and her breath hung in icy clouds. She shone her flashlight around, revealing a sinister, shadowy figure lurking in the corner of a dimly lit room. Heart pounding, Sarah stumbled back, her flashlight flickering. She tried to call out, but her voice was drowned out by the whispers that now filled the room. Incomprehensible words echoed through the manor, as if the very walls were speaking to her. Desperation and fear clawed at her as she attempted to leave the room, but the door slammed shut with a deafening crash. Panic set in as Sarah realized she was trapped in the haunted manor. She had scoffed at the legends, but now she was living a nightmare. Hours turned into an eternity as Sarah navigated the twisting hallways, each one darker and more foreboding than the last. She encountered eerie phenomena, flickering lights, disembodied laughter, and glimpses of ghostly apparitions. The manor seemed to feed on her fear, growing stronger with every passing moment. As dawn approached, Sarah stumbled upon a locked door at the end of a long corridor. She could feel a malevolent presence emanating from within. Summoning every ounce of courage, she forced the door open, revealing a chamber unlike any other. In the center of the room stood a long neglected grand piano, its keys tarnished with age. At the piano sat a figure cloaked in shadow, fingers dancing across the keys as if possessed by a sinister force. The haunting melody that filled the room was both beautiful and mournful, as if it contained the very essence of Lady Eliza's tragic fate. Sarah approached cautiously, her heart pounding in her chest. The figure turned slowly, revealing a face that was both familiar and spectral. It was Lady Eliza herself, her once beautiful visage twisted by centuries of torment. With spectral eyes fixed upon Sarah, Lady Eliza whispered her story, a tale of betrayal, imprisonment, and a dark pact that had bound her soul to the manor. She had been waiting for centuries, yearning for release from the endless torment inflicted upon her. Sarah, her skepticism shattered by the harrowing reality before her, pledged to help Lady Eliza find peace. Guided by the ghostly apparition, she uncovered a hidden chamber beneath the manor, a place of darkness and forbidden rituals where Lord Nathaniel had sealed his wife's soul. Together, they performed a long-forgotten ritual, calling upon the forces of light and goodness to break the curse that bound Lady Eliza to Ravenwood Manor. The very foundations of the manor shook as the malevolent energy was purged, and a blinding light enveloped the chamber. When the light faded, Lady Eliza stood before Sarah, her spirit finally free. With a grateful smile, she faded away, leaving behind a sense of peace and closure. Sarah emerged from the manor, changed forever by her nightmarish ordeal. She had come face to face with the haunting truth of Ravenwood Manor and had helped free the tormented soul trapped within its walls. From that day on, the legends of Willowbrook changed. No longer a place of dread, Ravenwood Manor became a symbol of redemption, a testament to the power of bravery and compassion to dispel even the darkest of curses. And Sarah's name would forever be associated with the night she confronted the horrors of the past and helped a restless soul find its way to the light. In the quiet, unassuming town of Havenbrook, there stood an old, forgotten theater known as the Moonlight Cinema. It had been a beloved establishment in its heyday, where townsfolk gathered for laughter, tears, and cinematic magic. But those days were long gone, and the theater had fallen into disrepair, its once grand marquee now faded and crumbling. The story of the Moonlight Cinema was one that few remembered, a tale lost to the annals of time. It was said that during the theater's heyday, a tragic incident occurred on one fateful night. A silent film actress named Eliza Sterling had been performing on stage when an unforeseen accident struck, leaving her forever mute. Eliza's career spiraled into oblivion, and she became a recluse, living in solitude for years. The Moonlight Cinema, which had once been her stage, fell into disuse, and it was whispered that Eliza's anguished spirit lingered within its decaying walls. One crisp autumn evening, 3 adventurous teenagers from Havenbrook decided to explore the old theater, fueled by curiosity and a dare from their friends. Sarah, Tim, and Emma gathered outside the Moonlight Cinema with flashlights in hand, their breath visible in the chilly night air. The marquee flickered eerily as they approached, casting long shadows that seemed to dance in the moonlight. The once beautiful theater now loomed before them as a decrepit relic of the past. As they stepped inside, the air grew heavy with the scent of decay and dampness. The teenagers cautiously moved through the theater's lobby, their footsteps echoing in the silence. They entered the main hall, where rows of dusty, torn seats faced a tattered movie screen. Emma's flashlight beam caught something unusual, a life-sized cardboard cutout of Eliza Sterling in one of her silent film roles. The actress was depicted in a scene of joyful celebration, her face beaming with happiness. Sarah shivered as she looked at the cutout. "They say this place is haunted, you know," she whispered, "that Eliza's spirit still lingers here." Tim scoffed at the idea. "Ghosts and spirits are just stories, meant to scare kids like us. There's no such thing." But as the trio continued to explore, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. Strange, faint whispers seemed to drift through the air, and the temperature dropped perceptibly. Sarah's flashlight began to flicker, casting eerie shadows on the theater's decaying walls. They found themselves drawn to the stage, where a torn, dusty curtain hung. As they pulled it aside, they uncovered a hidden door leading to a subterranean chamber beneath the theater. It was a place that had been sealed for decades, a forgotten world beneath the world. With a mix of curiosity and trepidation, the 3 friends descended into the underground chamber. The air grew colder, and the whispers grew louder. As they explored, they discovered rows of vintage film reels, old posters, and strange symbols etched into the walls. And then, at the heart of the chamber, they found it, a vintage film projector, pristine and untouched by time. Sarah, guided by a mysterious compulsion, threaded a dusty film reel onto the projector. As the first frames flickered to life on the screen, a silent film from Eliza Sterling's past played out before them. It was a tale of joy and sorrow, of love and loss. But as the film reached its climax, the image on the screen shifted, and the trio gasped in horror. Eliza Sterling, on the screen, turned her gaze toward them, her eyes filled with an otherworldly, malevolent energy. She stepped out of the screen and into the chamber, her presence palpable and her intentions clear. "You have trespassed where you should not have," she whispered, her voice a chilling echo. "Now, you shall become part of my eternal silent film." The underground chamber began to morph and twist, becoming a nightmarish set from Eliza's silent films. The teenagers were trapped within, their screams silenced as they became characters in her dark, silent narrative. For eternity, they danced to her macabre tune, their faces contorted in terror as they played their roles in the twisted, endless story of Eliza Sterling, the silent film actress whose anguish knew no bounds. And as the Moonlight Cinema's marquee flickered in the night, the legend of Eliza Sterling lived on, her tragic tale forever entwined with the fates of those who dared to enter her haunted theater. A story never heard before, a rare and terrifying tale from the depths of the past.